Welcome back to Bought the Biz. Today we're talking about what it actually means to be the CEO of a small business. When people picture a small business CEO, they think strategic planning and vision casting. But the truth is that most days it looks like diving into details around compensation, or talking to a customer who's upset, or figuring out payroll, and all in the same afternoon. ETA isn't about becoming some glossy version of a CEO. It's about becoming a real operator.
Bought the Biz is a podcast for ETA entrepreneurs who've gone from searching for a business to actually running one. It tells the real story of what happens after the deal closes. The day-to-day, operational, emotional, strategic, and leadership challenges that just don't show up in the highlight reels.
The show is story-driven and practical, sharing real experiences from operators along with clear, actionable takeaways you can use in your own business today.
I'm Garth Fasano.
I'm Christi Loucks. Welcome to Bought the Biz.
Welcome back to another episode of Bought the Business. Today, Christi and I are going to talk all about what is it really like to be an SMB CEO? What were the expectations and what was the reality and what matched and what really didn't? So let's just jump right in. Christi, what did you think that this was going to be like at first? What were your expectations? What were the hopes and dreams? And then we'll maybe talk a little bit more about like what reality was like.
I just thought I'd be in my ivory tower collecting cash.
So you listened to all of the propaganda out in the universe about ETA then?
I was sold the dream, man. I was sold the dream. No, just kidding. I definitely, I knew that coming in, I guess, like when I bought Revenue Accelerator, I knew that I would be wearing a lot of hats. I knew that I'd be diving into many areas of the business. Whether it's like marketing, obviously sales, that's my background, operations, accounting, like I knew that I was going to be doing all of those things. What I didn't realize maybe is how granular I'd have to get into those like functions. Like I thought I'd kind of have to like dip in, answer a few questions, come back out, dip in, answer a few questions, come back out. And it was like in the weeds, completely rebuilding, recoding a website for like a rebrand. And it's like digging into these fields in our CRM to make sure that everything's mapping correctly. And like, it was so granular what I had to be able to dive into. And I think that ability to be able to see the entire surface area, but then go really deep and then get back out was not the like motion that I expected to have to do every single day.
Yeah. How many times do you feel like you were, how many times do you actually feel like you got to do the strategy work you just said coming up and out? Like, was that even a reality in the first 90 days? Was there any of that or was it all in the weeds maybe? First
90 days. I mean, we did like a kind of a strategic, so we ran on EOS as like an operating system, entrepreneur operating system. And we did a part of that is like you do a quarterly kind of like big like strategic planning session. So we actually did a giant strategic planning session when we transitioned the business. So the former owner was involved. We got the whole team online and like actually went through that, which is a pretty tedious exercise. It's like a day and a half that I know we spent on it. So within the first 90 days, right, that was kind of like the foray into the business and a way for us to usher me in as like the new leader and kind of get aligned. But then after that, oh no. I mean, I don't think EOS people would be rolling their eyes at me, but I don't think I touched strategic stuff until like multiple quarters later.
Yeah, I think probably very similar. I feel like in my talking about the transition period, in the first 30 days, I probably just didn't even know enough to be so far into the weeds. So I felt like I probably got to think about the business a little bit more in the first 30 days, other than, working through a bunch of other tactical transition wrap-up items. And then I did create a board of advisors. And so I did do quarterly meetings for them and like effectively built a board deck every 3 months and went through that process, which I think was good for me to get my head out out of the business, think what are the big projects we were working on, and help me orient for the next sort of 30, 60, 90 days. And so I kept that process up. So that was my moment to think a little bit more strategically. But I think in general, yeah, you are really pulled into the sort of weeds. So I think we should like give people a bunch of examples of really what that is all about. And I think probably, I think probably the top couple of categories are accounting, finance, payroll, sort of financial category. I think there's a pretty large people category. So hiring, training, performance management, I think that's a pretty big category. Then I would say client management, customer management, sales. I think that was actually a huge, massive category that was really not what I expected it to be. And I can go into some more details on that. So I think that those are probably my three really big buckets. And then I would probably add technology as the other one. I think you and I both had pretty technology heavy businesses. So I am basically like a Salesforce.com administrator at this point. I think I probably know more.
So much fun. Isn't that what you always wanted to do?
Yeah, exactly. So those are probably three big buckets. And I think what we should do is maybe take a piece of each of those and, tell people what we kind of like thought it would be like, and then what it's really like. How does that sound? That
sounds great. Which one of those fun buckets do you want to start with?
Let's start at the top, accounting, finance, payroll. So I assume you were also the one running payroll at your company?
So we have I have a fractional accountant, bookkeeper, basically. Yep. And so he could help me set everything up. And then I just actually had to approve. So I was fortunate in that I didn't have to click the button to set everything up and, do the actual work of setting up payroll. I did just have to approve it. But I had to be intimately involved, and I had to know every dollar that was going to every single person. And we had tracking mechanisms across a couple different spreadsheets, but then we also used this tool, this kind of forays into tech, but we used a tool called Hubstaff because we had an offshore company. We used a tool called Hubstaff, which is specifically for time tracking. It also records screens, so you can make sure that people aren't moonlighting and doing other jobs. So yeah. So we had a lot of process that went into running payroll that I did have to manage those pieces and make sure that our bookkeeper was set up to get access to all of the time tracking that he needed.
Yep.
Did you have to run it?
We had, I had somebody that was helping with it. But sort of processes changed, and it was too difficult to train this person offshore to sort of set up the import spreadsheet every time. So ultimately I started doing more and more of it. And eventually I got the process fully coded up with integrations into our telephony platform. That was basically the time tracking platform. But still, because we were a sales organization, there were commissions that needed to be paid. And so there were multiple reports that had to be pulled, merged to do calculations. And so it was a pretty intensive process. It probably took me a while to get it down to a 3-hour process, I think. So yeah, that was definitely a big thing.
Payroll scares me. So I actually, in a former life prior to buying a business, I worked for a tech SaaS company, and I came into that company as an HR assistant. I was one of the lowest paid employees, and I know that because I had to run comp reports for everybody. And so part of my job, I had to help out the payroll department, and so I ran payroll for the hourly employees for that SaaS company. And the fear that I had in my soul upon hitting submit on payroll was so great, just because people and their money, you will not see rage and fury like you will if you mess up somebody's pay.
Yep, definitely.
So I have while I didn't have to, do that same process specifically for once I bought a business, I know that fear. Yep. And it can create just this ripple effect, and you just don't want to mess it up.
So here's a wild one that caught me off guard is, I was following the process that the seller was doing, and I kept that up. I can't remember when this happened. It might have been within the first 6 months. It might have even been like a year and a half later. I implemented a new payroll system, and I wanted to make it more systematic so we could like plan it. And it wasn't just this scramble to get it done and the way it was. And the handbook that I'd been provided by the seller, actually, she didn't provide a handbook, but it was the process outline, gave 5 days from the end of this pay period for payroll to be processed. And so I inputted that into this new system that was going to help me automate it and introducing a little bit of technology to make it simpler. But what I didn't realize is that because we had paid it so quickly, sometimes it was paid a little bit early, that everyone in the company expected it to be paid early ahead of the deadline. And so when I started paying it out on the deadline, people were upset. And like literally some people were like, hey, like I just had checks bounce because you didn't pay me on time. And I was like, I just genuinely didn't even understand. And it was so confusing. I was like, but I'm paying it out exactly when it says it's going to be paid out. And they're like, oh, but that's not how it always worked. It's like, and so I was like just so disappointed in myself, in the process, in everything. And so like, those are just blind spots that are going to come up. And now you're going to get sucked into this vortex of this as sort of the drama for the day instead of pushing the business forward. So like be prepared.
Exactly. And it can be it's such a distraction at that point. You're like, yeah, half your day now is, well, shoot, what did I do? How do I fix it?
Exactly.
You got to get into all the configurations and the settings and now you're annoyed and can't focus for the rest of the day. It's great.
Absolutely. So that is a real thing. I mean, so that's the payroll topic. Accounting and finance, it sounds like you got some outside help. I eventually got some outside help, but I ran the books for quite a bit as well.
Yeah. I will say that's just one thing as people are coming into their businesses, like I think it's important to understand like where your strengths are. Like that is not I don't like accounting and finance to like actually do it. I'm obviously well-versed, went to business school and all that, but like it is not the thing I enjoy. It is not the thing I want to spend my time on. And it is way more effective and efficient for me to like outsource that. So I was lucky that I had someone that he came with the business and he's fantastic. But I like never wanted to take any of that on myself. My husband now, he's like Mr. CFO background. So he doesn't care at all about, models and financial stuff and running payroll. Like he can do it in his sleep. That was not my thing.
One of the unique things about my business, and the reason I was comfortable doing it myself, is that there was very low working capital needs in the business just because of the cash conversion cycle. Whereas I think if there was a more working capital intensive business, like I probably wouldn't have tried to do it myself. Yeah.
Okay. That's a really good point.
Anything else on those topics? And then we can
move to the next one.
Yeah. What do you think? Anything else? All right, let's do people, hiring, training, performance management. How many times a year would you hire people, or was that pretty consistent?
We only like a couple times. It was, we were fortunate enough to have a pretty like tenured team, even though it was still, offshore. So I think I only hired like 2 or 3 people over the course of like 18 months. So it wasn't a lot of effort on that hiring front necessarily. My biggest thing, and we kind of talked about this previously, was I had to dive really deep into compensation and like really understand the compensation structures, because I had people in Canada, Europe, Philippines, and India, and those are all like such different norms to contend with. So a lot of my work around like the people stuff was really related to that comp conversation.
Yep. I mean, comp is a huge one. We talked about that a bit the last time, but yeah, get ready for those discussions. For us, hiring and training was a pretty big process that we would run about 4 times a year. The first time I hired a class was we started about 3 months posting the job after I acquired the business, we got over 5,000 applications. And so it was just all hands on deck reviewing applications. That was like with basically no advertising dollars for that. We got 5,000 applications, which was just bonkers. So we have a 90-day training program. So that was, and basically I'm in running training with a couple other folks too. So that takes you out it took me out for at least a week, more like 30 days for some of the larger classes that we would hire. Now we have someone who runs the training classes this past year. So that has been way, way better. But that is a big process.
Yeah, I would say that. So kind of pulling forward into like where I am today, right? Kind of heading up a couple agencies, and those agencies are getting to a critical mass where we do really need to take the next step and hire additional operations people. Now that like we're very lean on both agencies, so I am going to have to be the one to like write the job description, do all the training. I'm almost stepping, I won't say back, but certainly into an even more tedious role on the hiring front and the training front than I was when I originally acquired a business. So it's not something I love. I mean, it's not something I love to do just because it takes time away. And that's the hard, it's the tug of war between like, I know this is going to pay dividends in the long run for me to train you and teach you and like enable you, but man, I need to do my job.
Yep. So like, just these are the things you have to think about. You're going to be writing the job description. You're going to be figuring out how and where to post it, reviewing job applications. We had a process where I would typically only do the final round interview, but we had multiple other rounds of interviews, and sometimes like gates or tasks for people to do in between those. And so like, this is a whole process that you may or may not have to get involved in running. And then, what comes out the other side is then training them and then, managing the compensation after that. And yeah, so that is I don't think I had envisioned how in depth I would need to be in those processes. When I acquired the business, there was somebody who was running like hiring and that process. And, they lasted, I think I can't remember if it was 3 or 6 months. And, to be honest, I had to step into the process a whole bunch anyway.
Yeah.
So like that is.
Yeah. The hiring thing is, I mean, not only do you have to do, I think like, not only do you have to do the tedious work of setting up the job, the roles, and like everything we just talked about, but I think for me, the most mentally draining part about hiring is trying to check myself to make sure that I have the right barometer on a person and not just hire for speed or hire for potential. I think those are sometimes two things that I default to just because I either like want to believe the best in someone and that's just a me problem, or I'm really pressed and I need to fill a seat. And those can be like competing viewpoints at times, but like making sure that you're not only just putting all the logistics out there for hiring someone, but you're also doing the screening and like keeping a really solid hold on what you actually need for your business.
It's a super important part. I mean, for us, we were always hiring kind of the same role, that frontline entry sales role. I mean, I'm sure for you, it's a little bit different because you're filling different needs. So I imagine like for us, we sort of had a routine that we could follow with that, but for you, it's probably a little bit different every time. And that's sort of tricky in its own way too. I think that the next one we talked about is customers and sales. I bought a business that did not have project-based revenue, while our revenue was not committed amount each month. It would change because it was outcome-based, but we didn't have to go and resell. So I didn't actually spend a ton of time doing sales early on, although we did sign a pretty big new client in the first 6 months. But a lot of time was spent on client account management, I would say. And only until recently did I realize how much time was spent there and how much we did. And the people who have joined the team said, I should have been charging like $2 million a year in professional services fees for what we were doing. And I've despite being a career consultant, I only sort of just realized that.
Leaving money on the table, man.
Yeah. So let me provide a little bit more context. So because what we'll get to in the next part is the technology and the CRM, is we were running sort of the, most sophisticated database for our primary client group. And so we had the best data on their customers, their sales process, their conversion rate, why people are booking, why people are not booking. And we made all this data available to our customers through a portal. And so they could go in and look at it themselves, but generally they would instead just call us and ask us for it and for our thoughts and perspective on it. And we would give it to them because it was incredible value add service for them to understand what's working, what's not, how do we adjust offers, how do we move these things around. But what I think I realized over time is that was probably an even more valuable part of the service than the actual execution of sales that we were doing.
Well, and that goes into a whole like pricing and packaging discussion. Like now you got to be a pricing and packaging expert.
I am a pricing and packaging expert, but just not for my own business, for my clients.
Perfect. There's actually, just on that note, and I can't believe, so I know there's a lot of gurus out there and I'm always very skeptical of the gurus, like Alex Hormozy.
Yep.
Okay. I have opinions. However, I had a searcher that I was talking to recently. He owns a commercial cleaning business that operates in California and Colorado. He was like, no, you need to read this 100 million or money models, or I forget even
the new one, the new one, the offers.
The new one.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's like, you need to read this. And I was like, Matthew, I am not reading that book. I am not doing it. And he's like, no, this book has brought me so much revenue from different streams, different pockets, different like areas where I can charge and didn't realize I could charge. And so I begrudgingly freaking bought this stupid guru book, and it's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
So it's pretty good. Like that's the kind of stuff I wish I had or would have been open to even going into the like sales, pricing, like all of those different components.
So our little digression here though, but I think this is important because you hit on a good point, is we now work across a whole bunch of classic ETA searcher businesses, particularly in home services. And the number one issue we see in their sales is that they have the wrong offer. The way they are framing their services is completely wrong for the way that they are selling. And the way they are packaging this is totally wrong. And so I think I've listened to the audiobook for, I think it's you're right. It's either $100 million money models or $100 million offers. It goes through a lot of these. I think it's much more complex than he lets on in the book, and it's more complicated to figure that out. But that is the most important thing. And I would really say it's just keep it as simple as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 100 million money models. So
okay, you're right. You're right. I think of it as the offers book. It just goes through like all these different ways of offering your services, which I think is I've seen some pretty crazy ones, and we've helped our customers really refine theirs so that they can actually generate a lot of revenue. Like we've had owner operator businesses do 500K in revenue in the first 12 months, and it's just bonkers. And it's 1000% because they got the offer right, or we helped them get the offer right.
Yeah. And that's where like you have to come, sorry, one more point and then we can move on to the next one. But like, I think when you come in as CEO, you do have to, this is the art of like building the plane while you're flying it, right? Like you have to be able to keep that revenue going and like continue the sales process and all of that. But then you also have to really evaluate these kind of things. And it might be immediately disruptive, but yeah, if you pull in an extra 500K in the first 12 months, like I'll take that.
Yep. Exactly. So we're digressing a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
It's a good digression, so I'm going to just keep pulling on it. Did you change anything in your pricing or your offers in the first 12 months?
Yes.
Okay. And
I did.
Was it good? Was it bad? Was it scary to make those kinds of changes? Because I think another thing that's on everybody's mind is like, I just don't want to change anything, right?
Yeah. So yes, we changed stuff. Yes, it was scary. In some ways, I think it helped me. In some ways, I think it hurt me. So when I came in, the former owner had set up a pricing model that was like a platform fee plus a volume-based kind of consumption fee plus a success fee. And when we talked through those three things with prospects, Some understood, but many were like, wait, why? Like, what are these three different things that I'm paying for? And how is it all adding up to, $5K a month or something like that? Yep. So to simplify it, we eliminated the volume based approach.
Simplify offers. Yeah. That's like that's the money model. Simplify if you can't read it. Simplify. Yes.
So we eliminated the volume component and then kept the success fee and the flat retainer, because the success fee was our upside and we articulated it like, hey, it aligns us to your goals and like we're motivated. Now we also had a major headwind in the industry where cold email deliverability got smacked down. So that success fee ultimately took a nosedive because we all of a sudden were cruising and then we couldn't help our clients book meetings. So when that hurdle came, then I just made it a flat retainer. Here's why: because I didn't want to set an expectation that I was going to get all these meetings when I knew I could get some, but with the industry the way it was and people's value propositions have to resonate in the market, I can't control a lot of that. So I can do my best, but if your product or service is not like resonating, then that's a you problem. So I did ultimately eliminate that component too. So it just became a flat retainer. That's where I think I ultimately left some money on the table, but it did allow me to acquire more clients faster. So I'm not sure.
I mean, we've gone through a very similar transition where we were basically all success fee and the offer has not been resonating in the market, and we've been transitioning to a flat fee model for the platform. And that has opened up huge doors for us to new customer acquisition. People understand it more. It's more manageable. And, I think that, so totally agree. It has taken me, I did do some changes in the first year, nothing that dramatic until I would say, this year. Okay, last topic, tech administrator, the other things as a CEO you didn't think you would be doing. Like, I know Salesforce pretty darn well. I had never done any Salesforce administrator work, but it's not that complicated. It just takes time to go and learn it. And I have a phone a friend for when it gets over my head. I've got a guy in Denver that helps us out with those types of projects, but we're moving away from Salesforce, so I'm not going to need that skill too much longer. Yeah.
Salesforce.
But you also said like you rebuilt a website and you were doing some coding on that. So there's going to be all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, I've done a little bit of that, like web design and whatnot, but not to the extent that I had to rebuild a website. My biggest thing was, do you know the Zoho platform? You've heard of it?
I know of it. I haven't worked in it before.
So the entire business was built on Zoho. And Zoho is like a Salesforce where it's like a bunch of different modules Frankenstein together. And it usually works decently well, but it's still a little clunky. So that was my biggest learning curve, was learning how all these different modules within Zoho came together to operationalize the business. And that was not a super fun task.
Yeah. Okay. So we just went through these 4 buckets. Let's take a little bit of a step back. How much of your time prior to the acquisition did you think you would be spending on these kind of very tactical things versus strategy, offers, changing pricing, like the fun stuff? We both kind of lit up as we were talking about that. What did you think that the time balance was going to be beforehand? And then give people the reality check of like, what was it afterwards?
I mean, I don't know. It's a little hard to be retrospective about this, but I would say I probably expected like 50%, like a 50% split.
Yeah.
Where I'm in the day to day, I'm, helping the team with very tactical things, but then I can spend half my day or half the week, like really trying to think through bigger problems. My reality was like 80-20.
80-20. Reality was 80-20. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's probably about accurate for me, with like 50-50 was like, I knew that I was going to be in the weeds, and I think that's awesome. Like that, I think we all knew that. I think the amount to which
we were in the weeds. It was probably more than we both expected. And we also both bought businesses that were not owner operator businesses buying a job. I think we both bought at an appropriate scale where you would typically not think you're buying a job, but just we were still in the sub 5 million revenue category. So you're still a little bit more towards buying a job than not, I guess. I was trying to think of like, what was the actual splits of financial, people, customer, sales, and technical of the 80% that we said we actually did. I think I'm trying to just do quick math here to sort of see what it looks like. I was coming up with 50% customer account management kind of stuff, 20% financial, billing, accounting, payroll, because that would be a couple days every month. That was like fully spent on that. And then people, about 20%, that would be more in waves, like when we were doing a hiring class or there was something going on. And then technical was probably 10% for me. I'm guessing technical was maybe a little bit more for you.
Yeah, I had more on the technical side, I would say. Yeah. Probably less on the like finance accounting because I had help with that, and on the people side because we didn't have we had the comp, but I didn't have to hire. I didn't have to do any of that stuff right away. It was really like understanding all the different technical components, and that wasn't even just Zoho. Like we had a bunch of other platforms that that I had to learn.
Okay, now the last question, and I got to think about this one too. What was the one thing that you did not expect at all that took up so much more time being the CEO, owner, operator of a small business that you did not anticipate? Like what came out of left field that you're like, holy smokes, what is this thing?
I can tell you one right out the gate, actually. Yep. So we were primarily doing cold email as our service. And what I think a lot of people don't know, and I certainly didn't even know the extent of it, is there's a lot of tech, like IT level infrastructure that needs to be set up properly behind cold email in order for it to work and in order for it to not go to spam folders. And really fun fact, it always changes. It's constantly changing and it's a black box and nobody can ever figure out like exactly what you have to do until after you've been blocked. So it's just this like hamster wheel of stress. I had to learn the intricacies of email deliverability, which I never, ever thought it's going to be like an IT admin. But here I am like configuring like DNS records, setting up DMARC, DKIM, name an acronym. I figured it out, like looking at like the trails of like where emails got sent from, where they got sent to, tracking IP addresses. Like I was IT nerd hat was on, and I never thought I would have to do that. Like I thought I'd have to know enough, right? But like being in that, configuring DNS records is not something I ever thought I was going to have to do.
Yeah. I think that one is probably pretty unique to your business, but like, I think that's the kind of thing that's going to come up for anyone.
And I resisted it at first.
Yeah. I feel like that for the business you acquired for Revenue Accelerator, you just had to lean into that for sure.
I had to, and I didn't want to at first because I didn't want to because it's very complicated and there's no clear cut answers. So it's a little daunting, but then I just, I think I was scared of what I didn't know. And that was the limiter for me. So I finally just had to be like, okay, I don't know a lot. I don't know any of these. I'm going to have ChatGPT helping me. Like, this is just a big thing that I have to conquer, but I have to do it.
Yeah, there's something like that I could answer, but I'm going to do the cop out. And because I think that everyone needs to make sure that we've really hit this home, but it's compensation, like compensation strategies, bonuses, how that works, talking people through it, building support for what you're doing and, getting everybody on board with the new program and the comp model that supports it. I think I sort of envisioned like, there's not going to need to be that many changes. It's worked before. And, I think that just always had to be a continual discussion. There were a lot of things as well in my business like yours that I think are super unique. So I would just sort of also imagine that every business is going to have something like your DMARC, IP addresses, tracing emails, whatever that is for that business. I certainly had them. So I would plan on that sort of specific to the business thing as well as probably compensation.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this one up?
No, what about you? Did we miss anything?
I think this is going to be a good one. I think people need to hear this. There's all the people out there in the world these days saying ETA is the future and what everyone should be doing. And people really need to hear what it's actually like to sit in the owner, operator, and CEO seat. So see you on the next one.